times, and I'm so excited to have Michelle Ascott, who is a life coach, an international life coach, and now working in Kenya, to talk about some things that I feel are very important. Welcome, Michelle.
Welcome, Pinky. Thanks for inviting me on the show.
Now, I'm so honored that you would give us your voice, especially at this time. I know you're in high demand, and I know everybody's sort of requesting interviews from you. So I'm so glad that you are able to give us some insight as well as to what's going on and how we are all feeling.
My pleasure, Pinky.
Okay, so Michelle, the first question I wanted to ask you, it's actually something that I briefly spoke about. I've read articles on it, and the article, the title of the article was actually called that feeling you're feeling is grief. And it didn't make sense to me initially, but then when I thought about it, I said, actually, I've been here before. When I lost my brother, when I lost my father, although when I lost my father I was much younger. And of course, when my mom had her stroke, there's a lot of similar feelings that are coming forward, and I'm questioning, what is this? It's a yucky, muggy feeling. It's a discomfort, for lack of a better word. Is it grief?
Absolutely. Because if we think about what is the definition of grief, and it's basically the loss, or metaphorically speaking, the death of something.
Right.
So, yeah. And if you think about it, we are mourning the old norm. The loss of going to events, going out with our friends, our children going to school, being able to go on play dates. So, yes, we are collectively going through grief and loss at this time.
So maybe you can walk us through the stages of grief.
Yeah. So originally there were 5 stages of grief. A lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross did the first 5 stages, and then with her she worked with a student, Daniel Klauser, and he came up with the 6th stage. Wow. So the stages are initially shock or denial, anger, bargaining, depression, then acceptance. And the later stage that was added was meaning. So those are the 6 stages of grief.
Wow, meaning. Just could you elaborate or expound on that a little bit? Because it's a new stage in grief. And for me, is it finding meaning in the loss?
Yes, so this is a very interesting question, the meaning stage. So it was Daniel Klausler who came up with the final stage, and he sadly lost his son. So he was a grief specialist before he lost his son.
Wow.
And then going through it, he realised that there had to be a 6th stage, there had to be another stage. And it wasn't meaning in the sense of he was like, wow, I'm grateful that my son died, because he was never going to get that gratitude. But the meaning that he got was that he was grateful that his son chose him to be his dad.
Yeah.
So it's finding, it's not saying I'm grateful the situation happened. It's finding light and meaning from the situation.
Oh.
So if we look at it from the situation we're in now, for example, social distancing, which I know you talk a lot about, the light about that is it's just physical distancing. It's not social distancing.
Absolutely.
So that would be how we are finding meaning from this current situation that we're in.
Wow, and that takes a lot of sort of sitting with yourself and understanding who you are in order to be able to reach that stage. So I think we're still a bit far from there.
Yeah. And also the stage is not linear.
Okay.
So we can go, meaning
anywhere.
is probably the final stage, but we go through the different stages, and we're all different. So people, are going through different stages of grief, and also there's different losses, and also how we interpret them. Well, maybe some of us, what we're going through now is not so bad, but there's other people where they've lost more.
Right.
So we're all going through different stages, and it also impacts us in different ways.
Okay. What I wanted to ask you is the two types of grief that you've spoken about and you were telling me about as well, which I think is very interesting. Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about those two.
Yes, so there's anticipatory grief,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I think, if we use the metaphor maybe of like a storm coming.
Okay.
So the tragedy hasn't happened, but we're anticipating it. So, for example, in the time of now, COVID-19, we could be anticipating great disaster.
Right.
Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen. We're not fortune tellers, but we could, be going to the sort of negative side. So that's anticipatory grief. And then there's ambiguous grief, which I know that you're very aware
Oh,
of,
yes, yes.
which is where it can be an ongoing mourning, it can be something unknown. Maybe it's something that we've not even experienced. So examples are infertility, the loss of that child that you never
Yes.
had.
Yeah.
Or for you, I know you talk a lot about your beloved mom,
Yes.
and the fact that she had her stroke, and that ambiguous grief that is ongoing for you in your life, from what you've told us.
So then how do we handle grief? What are the best tools and ways that we can sort of make ourselves feel better? Because it's hard to be in this space of this discomfort. But I know we as in order to heal, we need to go through it.
Absolutely. And a lovely quote I heard was that we need to give emotion motion,
That's beautiful.
which I think is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can't just, say we feel angry, we can't just dismiss it. We have to face it. And the problem with grief is it is it's uncomfortable. The feeling of sadness and all these emotions are very uncomfortable for us. But we need to acknowledge those emotions. And it may just be, acknowledging it for 5 or 10 minutes. We don't have to be welling in it. But it's about acknowledging it and saying, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling unhappy, and just seeing where it rests with us and just being happy with that, having that emotion, being comfortable with it. And by naming it and acknowledging it, that is just so helpful for us to move on to the next emotion.
Okay. I'm going to now ask you about a term that I've heard, but I don't particularly like. It's called a new normal. Talk to me about this new normal and what it means in our world of COVID-19. And is this the new normal, or is it something that will change not only day by day, but even hour by hour?
Yeah. Well, I like to think about the analogy of a caterpillar in a cocoon.
Mm-hmm.
And when we come out at the end of COVID, the hope is that we'll come out as a butterfly. So we would have learned a lot. It won't be the same as the old norm. There were many things that needed to be changed. So hopefully, we learn a lot. So when we come out, the world comes out as a beautiful butterfly.
Right.
So at the moment, we're in a state of metamorphosis. We're changing, we're evolving. So we almost need a new term because we're in an evolving stage. And if you think about personal growth and when someone changes and steps out of their comfort zone and changes, it's often messy.
Yes.
And that's what we're going through now. We're going through a messy stage. And at the end of it, this beautiful butterfly will emerge. So it's going to be constantly changing. When I think about it, it's going to be like this. And daily things could be changing depending on your individual circumstances. So we're evolving into a new norm.
Okay, I completely agree. I mean, I went out yesterday and I realized that, now it's the law to be wearing this mask. And I was trying to have a conversation with somebody, and it was very difficult to have a conversation with your mouth covered. And again, it's part of the new norm. Okay, Michelle, I know you work with a lot of children, and kids have been home from school, and personally, I'm trying not to let the kids feed off my energy, which is sometimes can be feeling down or negative. I'm trying not to talk about the C word in front of them. I'm really just keeping it happy. They're on holiday for now. We go back to school, online learning next week. But talk to us about, kids who may be also grieving at this time. And
absolutely. I mean, for them, it's a big loss in terms of my son's school. They sent, my son's 4, one of them's 4, and my son's school sent a survey home, and we had to ask the children themselves, what did they miss? And I asked him, he's 4 years old, I said, what do you miss about school? And he said, I miss my friends.
Yeah.
So they're missing. They're missing their friends.
April Fool's Day, I went in and I'm like, guess what? Your teachers called it school's back. And I thought they would be like, oh man, no, we don't want to go back to school. But they were very excited, so I felt like a cruel evil mother.
That happens quite a lot. It backfired on quite a lot.
But that's also an integral a child's life is the social aspect. And now we're going to shift to online learning for a lot of schools, a lot of private schools within Kenya. How is this going to impact our children?
Well, I mean, it's a very big shift, but luckily our children we're the digital dinosaurs.
Right.
Like technical
I mean, we could tell, but just by getting on Skype today.
Yeah, whereas actually they've grown up with technology, so it's not too much of a change for them. And my son has just gone back to school, so he started back on Tuesday.
Okay.
And I have to say, amazing to the school. They've really stepped up and they've changed how they're doing it. So he's having, he is older, he's 9, sorry. So they are having lots of Zoom sessions. So every day he has a 20-minute session with his class and his teacher. And then he has 1 or 2 sessions of maths or English a day. So I think that's really helping with that social connection, particularly with his peers. So I think we are finding ways in this new norm.
I think so as well. And what about routine? Is it essential at this time, or does it just add to the stress?
I think routine is very important for children. But what we're saying is not, strict, rigid. A routine in terms of the breakfast routine, getting up, maybe the chores, then we start homeschooling. So having a loose routine is important, the same bedtime routine and lunch and things like those. So having those basics in place, but we also have to be flexible. We are going through a pandemic. There may be times when our children are wobbly, maybe when we're wobbly. We have to offer self-compassion to ourselves, but also to our children. So at times we may have to go, okay, this is not working for my mental wellness, for the children's mental wellness. We need to go crazy and dance or, go and jump on the trampoline. So we also have to be mindful that sometimes that routine is not working at that time. We are going through extraordinary times.
Indeed we are. So are there any tools that you can give us to sort of just guide us in regards to, you've told us about how we can sit with our grief and understand it, but also just, what we've spoken about, anticipatory grief, ambiguous grief, and anticipatory grief could also be linked with that whole new normal, like I'm worried about what tomorrow may look like. And so how do we, I know that as a life coach, you have a lot of ways to help, to help themselves. So maybe you can give us 5 top tips from Michelle today.
Okay, so 5 top tips. Mindfulness is the word that is one of the buzzwords at the moment. I know you were talking about it the other day on, I think, your Instagram story. And there's a reason for that. if we're in the, because mindfulness is being in the present moment without judgment. So stress and anxiety is often about anticipating what the future's going to bring, and also we can be worrying about the past. But if we bring ourselves into the moment, then we're not stressed. So there's some very easy techniques to be mindful.
Okay.
Simply just taking 3 deep breaths, so making sure that we're breathing in through our nose and our exhalation is longer. So just taking 3 deep breaths can bring us to the moment. One of my favourite activities is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding activity.
Okay.
Now this is great, particularly if you're feeling very stressed. So you just think about 5 things that you can see in the room at that time. So you find 5 things. 4 things that you can hear. 3 things that you can touch. 2 things that you can smell or you like to smell. And 1 great thing about you. That's a very simple exercise, but it's a great way to bring yourself into the moment. And if we can just pause, then often when we come out of that pausing, then things just don't seem so bad as they were before. So those are very important. I always talk about gratitude. If we can be positive even in these times, it's going to help us vastly. So I really advocate daily gratitude. However you want to do it, it could be 3 things you're grateful for. You could have a gratitude buddy where you share things you're grateful for that day. When you go for your walk or your exercise, just think about what are the things that I can see. Think about your senses that I'm grateful for. What are the things that I can hear that I'm grateful for? What are the things that I can touch? Gratitude just helps us to be positive. At this time, there's always a rainbow, there's always a silver lining, and there are just so many heroes out there at this moment.
I agree.
To be grateful for.
Yeah, oh, and I like the fact that you're always posting such lovely things. You're always sharing, this beautiful energy that you have, Michelle. And, I think it's also essential for people who are feeling low or worried to look for people like you, because, you offer such great guidance. You have the knowledge, you've been trained, you are skilled in guiding people through tough times, and this is a crisis. And so, we're grateful for someone like you as well, Michelle. Just tell us how we can get in touch with you.
Oh, thank you very much, Binky. And I also send that back to you. A friend of mine who is a great person as well was saying, it's very dark, so gravitate to the light. So gravitate to people who give you lightness. And she was saying, I realise that there's a reason why I'm here now, and it's to be the light for people.
Absolutely.
So we can all be the light for somebody. There's
Yes.
the stars in the sky.
You know what I say, it's good to be part of the solution, and being part of the solution is not sitting there and feeling bad for yourself or not doing nothing at all. I always encourage people when they're posting things, be very mindful and wary of what, because words have power, especially now.
Absolutely, because we're relying a lot on those words. So sorry, I didn't answer
Yes.
your question.
Sorry.
In terms of contacting
Yeah.
me, sorry. So I'm on Facebook, the International Life Coach, or the International Kids Life Coach, and you can also email me, and it's internationallifecoach with 1 L at gmail.com.
Michelle, just very quickly before I let you go, you are also working with kids. So, if somebody feels that they are fine and okay and can handle the situation, but maybe their kids feel a bit overwhelmed, I'm sure they can reach out to you for the same.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's important. We also have to look after our children, and also remember actually that they're being heroes at this time, because they're coping very well, with this change. So we also have to remember that our children are being heroes and acknowledge them for that. And absolutely, if anybody wants support with their children, I'm here to support in a playful and positive way.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'll let you go now. Say hello to your family. And once again, I really appreciate your time and your light.
And thank you for your light as well. Thank you so much, Pinky. Bye. Bye-bye.
So, of course, we are talking to Michelle Ascott, who's a life coach on What Women Want, as we have brought you What Women Want online. You can always get in touch with Michelle Ascott by emailing her, and of course, get in touch with us here on What Women Want. Thanks so much to SBM Bank for being merchants of hope and spreading the light and love during this time. Join us again soon. Bye-bye.